about the stimulus that we put in place. One, we looked at a number of things when we were supporting the economy and the business people in the last few months. One of the things that we did, we looked at how can we help the big companies, especially who want to do manufacturing, who want to do general import substitution for this country. And we invested 1 trillion for this financial year, and we have so far released 481 billion to Uganda Development Bank to cater for that the big businesses, especially focusing on manufacturing, value addition, agro-processing. So the resources are there. Who is qualified to get this? All Ugandans, all people who are doing business in Uganda are qualified to get this money, and the bank has put in place a criteria and also reduced on the procedure they used to have to be able to serve you better. They have also put in place a system where they can reach people who are up country. You don't have to come to Kampala to visit UDB. I think they are working together with, they have a system with Uganda Post Bank where you are being reached. And they are on website, they have a website that you can reach, and I will be telling them to publicize this information so that all Ugandans can access. If you cannot go to UDB, we said let's put money in microfinance support center, and we invested 50 billion in microfinance support center. We went ahead and also put 260, because if you can't go to UDB, at least you can go to a small financial institution, the microfinance support center, the 50 billion, which is also spread across the country. But if you can't manage to go to all these institutions, still government is reaching you. Instead of you looking for it, we are reaching you, and we put 260 billion in Emyoga. Emyoga, these are 18 enterprises that were identified. The youth leaders, the women leaders, the people who are involved in the mechanics. There are a number of them that we have identified, 18, and we have been informing them. The Minister for Microfinance has been working hard on this. And we encourage Ugandans to belong to a certain MOGA and benefit. But there are also those public-private partnerships that we're encouraging. One of them was companies like Attack Sugar. There are also other companies, like a company in Busoga, which is producing some products from cotton. They want support from government, and the government took a decision to work with them through Uganda Development Corporation. And because of that, we invested another 100 billion. And as all of you know, we also went ahead to help our people. We had some tax measures that we carried out to be able to support our people. For example, we said if we're employing a certain employing people, you can extend paying some pay as you earn for some time to give you some room of cash flow management. We encourage these commercial banks through Bank of Uganda not to harass their clients who have not paid. But I've heard that as we slowly get out of this COVID, they are saying now they are going to be knocking at the door of the clients. But at least for the last 12 months.
So that they also don't collapse.
Yes, but for the last few months, they have been lenient. They have been lenient. So those, Charlse, are some of the things that we did to ensure that people, and also we forgave penalty. If you have not paid tax, you have areas on penalties. We said don't pay that. Government said we are not going to charge you on that. So these are some of the things that we worked out to make sure that we support our economy. Now, somebody who has said people are borrowing from commercial banks, people are getting money from microfinance support center, are also now going to be part of the Myoga to access this money again. Well, let's say these are some of the challenges, the few challenges that we shall be looking at, but the most important thing, belong to a MOGA and get some money, get some capital to start your own business. So moving forward, the strategy for next financial year, which is in line with the National Development Plan, at the same time in line with our manifesto, the NRM manifesto, we will continue to support industrialization. We will continue to focus on making sure that we get people out of subsistence into the money economy. We want people to put cash in their own pockets. So what are we going to do? Where are we going to invest the money? We are going to invest the money. We are now going to put a revolving fund at the parish level, what we have called a parish model. We want all the services to be felt and served at the parish level. So if you want to do something at the parish level, and the government will also be supporting you through OWC, giving you the seedlings, but this time at the parish level. But at the same time, the MIOGA will also be continuing to serve the people. We're also focusing on building industrial parks because as a key strategy to implement our industrialization policy. And in the 18 zones, we have the 18 zones where we think that every zone should have an industrial park, attract investors, to build factories, especially value addition in these areas. And of course, infrastructure development will also continue to be one of the key interventions that we shall have in this coming budget. Okay. And obviously, peace and security, because whatever we are doing, if there's no peace and security, nothing happens. So these are some of the interventions that we'll be looking at, but majorly making sure that we focus on the subsistence households to ensure that they get out of their subsistence into the money economy, providing support at the parish level, but also ensuring that they have the environment to support them to build their economies at that level.
Okay, let me come back to the team this side. There is a question for
But there was an
Emma?
issue which they asked about, which I wanted to ask about borrowing before planning, that borrowing before planning.
Yeah.
There are those instances that happened a few years ago where people are not really very much prepared for the loans, and a few of them, not a number of them, and we discovered this, and moving forward we have said if you don't have a project properly planned, if you are not ready, we don't want to have this situation where you shoot and then you target after shooting. So we are now very strict about borrowing, not only borrowing, but even in other government departments, making sure that where the money of government goes, you must be prepared to receive it, and people should receive value for the money. So Amos, it was Amos or George, those instances happened in a few years ago, but they have been rectified now. I think we are on course to receive the resources and implement a government and serve the people of Uganda better.
Okay, there is a question for Emma. Someone called Mathoge Oge, I think, online. He says, "Thank you for the program. My question goes to Stanbic Bank representative. Me, I was working with one company, but I was laid off. I had a loan. Now that I'm no longer working, how can I be helped?" And then for the minister, Onyok Bonero says, "Bwana Charles, why is the minister talking about MIOGA funds, yet this money has been stuck in the bank for close to 4 months?" Let me start with Emma, and then I will come back to Rashmi.
Okay. So before I answer that question, because it comes into it, I'd like to react to something that Professor said. And it comes to our saving culture as a nation. I think COVID proved that we really have no savings. As soon as the lockdown happened, we quickly ate through whatever reserves that we had. And how do we change this culture of emmere? You survive for today's food, and therefore any shock leaves you in a problem, which goes back to that question that someone has asked, that they had a job, we gave them a salary loan, and now there's no salary. What we've been encouraging our customers to do is to come and have the conversation, to say, you gave me a job on the back of a salary, the salary is not yet there, how can we figure out how this loan is paid? So one thing I would encourage that person to go to their banker, because we understand. We are also employed. If I am laid off tomorrow, I'll be in the same position. But the second thing comes back again to what Professor said. What have you borrowed for? If you borrowed for consumption and you did not improve your cash flow as a household, then that becomes an even bigger problem. But what we also do on salary loans is take insurance against some of these things, such that at some point insurance kicks in. But insurance can only kick in if we have evidence that you've actually lost your job. So again, you need to come back to the bank and have the conversation. It's not of your own making, and the banker at the time of lending you the money took into consideration the risk of you possibly losing your job. So please have the conversation. Bankers are not bad people. They understand.
Okay. Then someone has sent a message also on not understanding what is supposed to be the catalyst for to deepen finance in Uganda, but also the question of that we have to touch on the NSSF debate, and that government says there is no cash. The second one, I need the Honorable Minister to be the one to answer, but the first one I needed to throw at Rashmi. What are your thoughts about which sector needs to really be, which areas really need to be triggered, need to be where the catalysts should be really, touched at? What's your view about those sectors that can rejuvenate the economy and get it back to its, maybe to its rail and run faster?
That's a question that Prof and the Honorable Minister can answer, but the Minister did answer that question, that the government is doing the right thing in terms of attacking sectors that can provide the most number of jobs. Yes. That's what we are looking at. Okay. But also jobs that create meaningful income. Because if you have jobs that only, as Emma said, help you live today, and you are not able to save, then it's not a decent job. So we should be looking at sectors like light manufacturing, as the Honorable mentioned, agro-processing, and others in this economy where we cannot do tourism, cannot do as much uptick that we have seen in construction that we would have seen. And those were sectors that had good employment multipliers, including hospitality, and they have gone down, so we have to look at the existing ones that can pick up quickly. I also want to mention a key important point that the Honorable Minister mentioned, and I'm taking it to extending it. If we have to look at if there are any lessons learned over the past year, and something that we have to make sure doesn't happen again, is the fact that if we were having a conversation around a digitized and digital economy, we now have to move from discussion to action. It is now significantly more urgent than ever, and that requires the entire financial sector, the private sector, to come and say, how do we digitize and make sure that exchange of goods and information is happening electronically? And then we will be able to have massive visibility because of that digitization, and the tax to GDP ratio that we were talking about, that will increase because there's a greater transparency. And that conversation begins actually with how is money moving transparently in the economy, and hopefully the Honorable, we will be able to have that discussion.
How is money moving transparently? Brings me back to the question. Someone called Dennis said, sent a message and said, I want to know from the Honorable Minister, what's with 481? That the Bank of Uganda, 481. UNOC, 481. Microfinance, 481 billion. That what is with this figure? Honorable Minister, you have that question, plus the one on NSSF debate, that there is no money that the savers have put there, and that there is no money.
Well, the first, the figure for the 481, I think many people, and I suspect that he also picked that from the Honorable Elijah Cooper, who asked me in the committee that the figure for capitalization of Bank of Uganda was 480. Now UNOC borrowing is 480. Then the money that we invested in UDB is also 480. They are not related at all. It's just a figure. It's just a figure, and it has no connection. So that's really the answer. On the issue of NSSF, we want to. I didn't get the context of the question, but the resources, the savings of the workers are there. They have been well managed. We have a board in place that manages it with the supervision of the minister, but also they have a law in place that looks at where is this money invested, in which areas that this money is invested. Every year we come out to give the return to the savings publicly and transparently, and we passed a law recently in the Parliament, which we have some little in one or two clauses, and we have written to the President so that it can be reconsidered. One of the clauses that I think was of much interest to the public was that people wanted to access what we called mid-term access. Yeah. That when you turn 45, and or if you have been saving for 10 years, or if you have you are struggling in some way or the other, can I access mid-term? Some of the savings are made. That's really a conversation that we are still engaged in, and Parliament passed this, and we had one or two concerns about it, but it will be resolved. It will be resolved in one way or the other. But the most important thing is to know that the resources, the savings of the workers are safe. Where they are invested is stipulated in the law. The supervision of this resource is very clear, and it's actually making a substantial contribution in terms of the financial management of this economy. For example, one of the institutions that lend government, where government get money, is actually through the financial system like that, because NSSF invests a lot in these securities for government. So you shouldn't have to worry if that is the context in which you ask the question.
I think the context let me pick it from the debate I've seen on the thread going on. One is that how can the minister tell the savers that there is no money to pay those who need that money, the mid-term access, but that two, it is their savings, so why shouldn't it be made available as and when they need it at that level? I think that's the...
No, I think we have a duty to make sure that we manage these savings properly. So what the minister meant was not that. He didn't say that there is no money for you, but he said if you put in the law that midway you can access money, that access should be regulated in a way that will make sure that the planning of investment for the fund is done properly.
Okay.
For example, if you left it open and at one stage everybody wants the mid-term and you have already invested it somewhere at that time, and that's why the banker here was telling you your deposits in the bank are on demand of the client. So the way they invest their money, they put into consideration that at one stage, Charlse or Professor will come and pick their deposits. So that's what we are talking about, that we should be regulated in such a way. And that's why in the original bill, we had said, let people access their resources mid-term, but let it be regulated by the board, so that at any one stage, where a board which is in charge and knows where the money has been invested can tell how to access this money. It doesn't mean that the money is not, it will always be there, but it's not seated in account. It is being invested to make money, more money for you. So to allow it to be accessed must be done in such a way that you don't embarrass anybody when they need their savings.
Okay. There is a question here to Professor Govi. And I need, once you answer this, then you have to ask our guests. We usually have a culture here. We have 3 panelists, but one is here. They usually ask you questions arising out of the topic for today. So brace yourselves for a question each from Ramadan. But Ramadan, you're also being asked here. The president has been consistent on the 3 bottlenecks, namely electricity tariffs, bank interest rates being higher than our GDP growth rate, and transportation costs. What is your opinion on these 3 bottlenecks? On these 3 bottlenecks' impact on our economic growth? How does Rashni's theory work with these 3 bottlenecks?
What is Rashni's theory?
That's a good question.
Well, I'll answer the bit of the impact of those constraints on the competitiveness of the economy of Uganda, because our economy, as you know, is still a small open economy, and Uganda geographically is disadvantaged that we are landlocked, although we are trying to be land-linked by linking other countries. But getting goods to the sea, we pass through territories of other countries, and therefore this affects the cost of transport, first and foremost. Our route, Mombasa-Kampala, if actually people didn't know, is the 2nd most expensive route in the world. After Chad, Cameroon, there is that route which connects Chad to Cameroon, is the most expensive in terms of the unit cost of transporting a container, a 40-feet container of goods. This one, Kampala, Mombasa, is the 2nd. Why? Because we are using road transport. And road transport is expensive for bulk goods. That's why the minister has to find money and build the railway, the standard gauge railway, and also connect us via Lake Victoria for water transport. Because that's the only way we shall be able to break even. Secondly, on the issue of electricity. Again, our electricity is expensive. Right now, the government did wonderful things to reduce the tariff of electricity for manufacturers, but they are paying 8 cents per unit, which is relative to other countries still very high, because countries are paying below 5. I mean, they are charging below 5 for manufacturers, 3 cents of US dollar per kilowatt hour For us, we are at 8. For us domestic consumers, it's quite high also, 13 and so on. Now, why is it high? Because in Uganda, we chose a model which is full cost recovery. Full cost recovery model on electricity. So, me, rather than my bill there in Yaka when I'm putting it, I've paid for the generation of that electricity, for its transmission and its distribution. In some other countries, they find a way of subsidizing, especially for productive sectors. And perhaps that's where we need to see, how do we go about it? How do we also not leave this electricity to private companies to decide on how they can maximize their profits and so on? Lastly, the issue of interest rates we have discussed, the cost of capital, is a problem in Uganda because our commercial banks, they are actually commercial. That word commercial means they are
profit driven.
They are looking for money.
Good.
And we left them to look for money. But now the good thing, government has started to distort them. Government is distorting them through those UDB, through the things which the minister has mentioned, the Myoga and others. Okay. Honorable Minister, I would now want to ask you actually, you have mentioned about the financing you are giving for large scale and perhaps medium scale enterprises through UDB. You have also mentioned the financing you are giving to the micro and perhaps circles for individuals through Microfinance Support Center, but also these micro, Myoga and so on. There is a huge gap in the financing of a typical business person in Uganda who's SME. That small and medium enterprise whose by UIA definition is employing about 5 people to about 20 or 50. And he needs a loan of say 100 million for him to restart, to reignite the business. This person, you completely forgot him in your arrangement. There was a proposal in the Ministry of Finance, because I was involved in some of these conversations, to create an SME recovery fund to be co-financed by the private financiers. And they were willing, commercial banks, for the first time, they were saying, let us do the SCF model for them at the beginning. 12% or below, whatever we agree, you bring money, we match it. Have you allocated some money for SME recovery fund so that we can help these business people who are now at the cliff? They are going to fall in, and they are the typical business person in Uganda.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ramadan. Of course, you know the answer because we have been discussing these issues in some way or the other. But for those medium, small enterprises, there is a lot that actually we are doing for them. One, in terms of the tax regime. Secondly, if you are involved in farming, the credit facility, agricultural credit facility, where we are partnering with the commercial banks, that fund is already there. If you are a small or medium enterprises, still you can even access money through a microfinance support center. That money is also there. So there are a lot of resources and also policy actions that were put in place to help small or medium enterprises. What we included now in the Lisa manifesto, he said they need affirmative action, and we agreed that we are going to create a fund specifically that can be placed in an institution, appropriate institution, and there has been debate about whether it should be UDB or whether it should be Post Bank or any other, for purposes of accessing people across the country. And this allocation is going to be provided for. I know we have not finalized the budget for next financial year, but nevertheless, in case it is not captured for this coming financial year, it has to be captured in a medium short term the following financial year. But in terms of helping those small medium companies, there are a number of resources and policy action were put in place to help them.
Okay.
Okay, Honorable, but if it is a recovery, it has to be done quickly. Timing will matter, because
that's
if
right.
It goes into medium term, then by the time you recover, they will be dead. Now, to my good friend Rashmi,
I thought they're all good friends.
No. You know, they are friends and friends.
Okay, that's a joke.
You have been doing the Finiscope for years.
Yeah.
And in that Finiscope, one of the key takeaways I always get is that we seem not to be talking about the realities of Uganda when we are discussing about financial deepening, because you always ask a question, where do Ugandans save? A typical Ugandan, where does that Ugandan save? And that typical Ugandan is saving at home, in a secret place. That typical Ugandan, when it comes to borrowing, is borrowing from a friend or a relative or an informal financial setting or whatever. Now, with this COVID having distorted most of the, in your other follow-up studies you have indicated, what do you think as financial deepening Uganda and your role in the financial sector, is that one thing that is needed to be done now to really reignite the financial system and getting the economy work for that smallest person whom I will not send to her, because as you have seen in the Finiscope, there are very few who go to her.
That's correct. So that's a great question, Ramadan, and thank you for asking that. So as Finscope indicates, most Ugandans work within what we call in the financial sector the Tier 4, non-deposit taking sector, the SACCOs, the MFIs, and they are either borrowing from friends or family and informal VSLAs, etc. So they have actively chosen, for varying reasons, to stay out of formal financial services. And formal financial services are expensive compared to them for it's not just direct cost of expenses, even like trying to get to the bank, trying to understand, put up collateral, they don't have that kind of time. So in that circumstances, the most immediate thing that happened during COVID was the risk that because bulk of the Ugandans were with the informal sector, nobody could tell what is the level of risk that these institutions were facing, and there are many of them. And if we want to build back better, the first thing we have to do is actually strengthen the resilience of the entire Tier 4, because that's where majority of the businesses are. That's where all of the micro businesses have largely borrowed from, and we don't even know, as Ramadan said, the level of indebtedness that these businesses have, because they borrow from money lender, then they borrow from a non-deposit taking MFI, and then they borrow from their friends and family. So actually digitizing and supporting the entire Tier 4 sector is a big and urgent demand, and therefore we can then help next time. For example, if the government had to even do a stimulus, let it take that as an example. The first question you have is, who do you target? How do you define that this household is poor, or this micro or small business needs this money? For that, you need information about these businesses, you need information on these households, and that information was not available when that analysis was actually being asked for. So having that kind of even that data will help us support these businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally to the banker, Your regulator, the Bank of Uganda, has severally come out these days to say that, to paraphrase it, that you are not following their policy rate. When they reduce the central bank rate, you take your time to reduce interest rates. But when they increase it, you follow them up the following day and you also increase. Why do you behave like that?
Or why do they act like that?
Luckily, I work for a bank that is very consistent on following the central bank rate. As soon as it is dropped, we drop. As soon as it increases, we increase. So
the regulator is watching.
Yes, and you're good at graphs. I can provide you a graph that shows that correlation. But generally, if I can hazard to speak for others, you have made a projection. It's based on a certain rate, and you have to recalibrate that projection at every drop. And if we look at the drops we've done as Stanbic, for example, in the last 1 year, we've actually saved savers 26 billion, but that means that 26 billion could have been on our revenue. So it is a direct hit to your bottom line, and we have to be frank about that. But that notwithstanding, you can actually behave better, and we have proven that we have behaved better.
Okay, thanks a lot. And we have eaten up our time. Actually, we have run into the morning hour. Oh. But there is this gentleman, Bonnie Kagaba, who is so insistent that, Charles, I'm from Makerere University Business School. Bonnie. And my question must be answered. My question is to Honorable Bahati. Why do we continue to borrow money when we are not investment ready? Because it's really a big challenge when we borrow, and yet we have not even done feasibility for the projects. Honorable, you can just, I know you had responded to similar things, but just say something in 10 seconds and then we go.
Yes, out of 100 projects that we are investing or borrowing for, that case can be probably 1 or 2, and we have addressed that issue. I think for the last 12 months or no, 8 months, we can no longer have that case where you find you have borrowed money and the project is not fully prepared to implement. So it's an issue that we addressed. It was a problem in a few cases, but we have now addressed it moving forward.
Okay. Ismail Ladu and the rest of the guys who have sent questions, my phone had an issue and it has just been reinstated, but I will pass some of your questions to the Honorable, and if there is a response, we shall bring them to you maybe and continue with the discussion online and off the set. But for now, we need to end the discussion. I want to thank so much the guests, Honorable Bahati, Mrs. Rashmi, and Mrs. Emma. Thank you very much for, sparing your time to come and share with us your expert knowledge and the information you have. And thanks a lot to Mr. Gobi, of course, all the time that he sacrifices to be here at this time. Thanks a lot to all of you out there from your sitting rooms and across the country, across the world, online and through the set that you're listening and following in this discussion. You are the greatest person to thank, and we thank you so dearly. And from the team, I want to thank the technical team for making this possible, and of course to all the producers that assist me to ensure that this show is done and done right, looking for the guests and the topics and planning all this. So to Morris, Bills, William, Fred, Ivan, and all the others, thank you so much. Until next week, God bless you all. God bless Uganda.
Vladimir vaccinated. The Kremlin confirmed that President Putin has received a COVID-19 jab. But which one will stay a mystery, with officials saying they won't specify the shot in order to highlight that all 3 Russian vaccines are safe and effective.